What's up, people? This is the Bleav in Saints podcast, and I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, seasoned reporter covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole. Erin, kind of a rough morning for a lot of people in our area with the storm and the
Mhm.
weather, so sending good vibes out there. Hope you're staying dry, staying safe. How are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. It is definitely pouring outside, and I know a lot of people have been dealing with a lot worse. So, as you said, hopefully everybody is staying safe and this passes soon and the flooding goes away. But hey, it's a little bit about what makes New Orleans so unique and why we love it, right?
Yep, we're used to it. Most of us still going to find a way to get to our jobs, and then most of us
hmm
going to chill in, some chill weather. Speaking of, good time of year to watch sports, right? This show is brought
hmm
to you by FanDuel. It is a great time of the year to take advantage of all the boosts and bonuses, especially for new customers on FanDuel Sportsbook. And there's lots of action to get in on right now. Whether you talk about it being baseball season, the World Cup off and popping, you can make some future bets looking ahead to the NFL season. Before we go any further, Erin, I'm going to ask you what Bobby Hebert asked Kellen Moore unprompted in the press conference the other day. Are you having any of the World Cup fever right now?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely watching. I have it on in the background if I'm around doing things in the house, but I'm definitely seated for the USA games. The first one was awesome. Friday coming up, we're going to be able to watch that one again in the afternoon. So I've been taking it all in and I love it. I love listening to the fans from overseas and their takes on the US and the fast food and just different things that stand out to them that we just take for granted every day. I know AC is a big one of those because they don't have a lot of air conditioning overseas. So, yeah, it's been fun to follow along on some of the fans' journeys as well.
It has. And the tournament's been really entertaining too. So getting on all the World Cup action. Shout out to our friends at FanDuel. All right, coming up on today's episode of Bleav in Saints, we'll talk some Cam Jordyn as he is back in New Orleans. That whole saga is over. It ends with Cam Jordyn remaining a New Orleans Saint. We'll have that discussion. We'll give some thoughts from each of us on the last week of mandatory minicamp as the Saints wrap up their summer practices. And Tyler Shough and Drew Brees making some plans for the offseason involving some of the Saints offensive players. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But we'll lead off with the Cam Jordyn conversation. Erin, it was an interesting, kind of fun scene in the facility the other day. It was reported from the beginning, and Kellen Moore acknowledged it in his presser that Cam Jordyn was meeting with the Saints on Tuesday. They
Mhm.
were hoping to finally reach an agreement, and that's exactly what they did. Good moment. He signs the contract inside the facility, surrounded by his wife, Nikki, his children. He left the door open for playing past this season, but
He did.
said in a perfect world it would be his last, but maybe his wife, his kids can convince him, just like they convinced him to come back to New Orleans. So lots to talk about here, but I'll let you have the floor first. What are your initial thoughts on Cam Jordyn remaining in New Orleans?
In true Cam Jordan fashion, he started the press conference in a completely unique way. And he had his son Tank take the microphone for the start of the press conference and explain himself because Cam Jordyn said that the reason why he's returning to New Orleans is because Tank said that for his birthday, he wanted to be back here in New Orleans. This is his home. This is where the kids were born. This is where their friends are, their school. And that really weighed on Cam. He said that that was what moved the needle for him on, okay, humbling myself, maybe swallowing a little bit of pride, ego, and taking a deal that was on the table, plus some tweaks because there were some conversations on a couple points of it with Mickey Loomis. But to be able to return back here was what his kids wanted. And I think that was a really fun component of that announcement and how it came to be, just to see the behind the scenes aspect of it with Cam returning for his 16th year.
And we'll talk about the football side of it. I think that's an interesting conversation with all the new bodies that the Saints have at defensive end. But I think it's a good outcome for the team, for
Mhm.
him, and for what it's worth. It's a 1 year contract worth $7.5 million, but he can get that value up to $11 million if he hits all his incentives, X amount of sacks and etc. Last year, he had 10 and a half sacks, and
Mhm.
it was interesting looking at his playing time. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's awesome that he is very, very likely going to end his career here because when you talk about Saints legends, there aren't many guys that number one, had that longevity, and number two, started and finished in New Orleans. I think there's a lot to be said for that, especially playing at that position and being as durable as he's been. I mean, this is his 16th season, Erin, longest tenured player in the history of the Saints. And my man's played in 16 plus games every season at defensive end, not a kicker, not a quarterback, taking and dishing out contact on every single snap. So the totality of it all is really impressive. I've said in past shows, and I'll say it again, I think last year he kind of proved me wrong, coming off of 2 seasons where he had single digit sacks and wasn't really a factor. Brandon Staley has really done a great job utilizing him. I think that he can have a limited role at first, but if he has a hot hand, if he is the better player, he is going to be on the field, right? I think it's a really good low risk situation for him and the Saints, and obviously his leadership is going to go a long way, being on a somewhat young team here.
There were a couple points of contention, things that Cam Jordyn took into consideration based off of his last season, 10.5 sacks. That's extremely productive. And albeit 15 years in, people start looking at your age and can you continue to produce at that level? And how much are we going to invest in you when we need to start developing some of our younger players? So there was a little bit of Cam having to accept that, yes, you are 16 years in now in the league, and you might not get what somebody who is 25 gets at 10.5 sacks production. So I understand the hang up there and thinking that he's deserved more, wants more. But then the other part of it was he wanted playing time. He wanted to make sure that he was going to be on the field. He's not ready to be the old head in the locker room just giving people advice. And he wants to still contribute. I talked to him and Chase Young in the locker room yesterday, and I mean, the energy just back and forth off the two of them, you could tell, even in practice, they were both dancing, with talking to each other. And you can tell Chase was so excited to have Cam Jordyn back alongside him. And Jordyn was like, yeah, me and Chase, we're going to get it this year, 17.5 sacks, and they're dapping each other up. And I'm like, 17.5 combined? Like, are you kidding me? I think we can go higher. And Cam's like, all right. I was like, I mean, 20? Like, you guys both had double digit last year. And he's like, all right, fine. We'll say 21. We'll say 21. And I was like, okay. But it's fun to see that dynamic and how excited they are to be able to get on the field together again. And they're talking about what they can do and how productive they can be on that line.
And I feel like there's so many stories that you and I could both probably tell about Cam Jordyn, and you could tell that he's genuinely like that. And I think, for this team, just having that presence will go a long way, because he's serious when it's time to be serious. He'll hold you accountable, but he's just good vibes. I don't know how else to say it. And I know you've had a lot of good experiences with him. He is definitely going to have a future, I think, in media. And one cool memory I have with him is he actually came on the Spanish broadcast for the LSU versus Clemson game in the college football playoff final. It was him. Marvin Jones wanted to get on. We probably should have had him on, because I learned later that Marvin Jones spoke Spanish. But Cam actually took the time to come on the Spanish language broadcast and talk a little LSU, talk a little bit about the Saints. So I'm personally, like I said, we'll have the football conversation in a second, but I'm really glad he's back.
Yeah, I think he does bring great energy, work ethic as well. The fact that he jumped in after just signing on Monday or Tuesday afternoon, he said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get on the field tomorrow because I have to pass a physical. There's things that you have to do. But sure enough, he was back on the field and he was participating just like anybody else would be in mandatory minicamp. So great sign there.
132 sacks all time for Cam Jordyn, 17th on the league's all-time sack list, half a sack behind Lawrence Taylor. So he's definitely going to pass him up this season, you would think. But it's interesting looking at his snap counts, Erin, because he had 10.5 sacks in not that many snaps. He only played 53.6 of the defensive snaps last year. And after Chase Young came back after the first 5 games, that number went down to 45.7%. And they went out and got Jennings in free agency. They went out and got Wilson in free agency. They have some young guys that have had really good stretches of pass rushing. Maybe not whole seasons of it, but there have been some 5 or 6 game stretches where Carl Granderson has been on fire. Chris Rumpf has had some good moments, and I think brings kind of a veteran presence. So there are a lot of bodies down there. I'm not really sure what Cam's role will be, but the prospect of a fresh Cam Jordan late in games, hopefully late in meaningful games, as the Saints are fighting for a playoff spot, I could definitely see Cam get like one good rep and get a key sack late in the game or something like that. So,
I agree. I think that a key component of the Brandon Staley defense is to be able to play fast.
mhm.
And if you can rotate players in, and we did see that often last year, so they're fresher throughout the game and towards the end of the game, why not? Carl Granderson was emphasizing it and talking to him in the locker room. He said so many times how fast they were going to be and how fast they wanted to play. So yeah, you keep fresh legs in there. Grando had a sack, would have been a sack yesterday during practice, and Fadil Diggs, another young player that they have on the roster as well, had one as well. So it's going to be fun to see how they utilize all of the weapons that they do have on the line. Because you even go inside, and we saw Christian Miller for the first time at practice, taking reps this week as well. And he's the rookie defensive tackle lining up against or next to Bryan Bresee. So having those two in the middle, that could be a deadly combo as well.
And having Chase Young, having Cam Jordan around for a little while longer, I think will be really beneficial too. I think he's kind of the X factor to the season,
Mm-hmm.
Erin. We had a really interesting conversation with Steve Weish last week. Go check that out if you haven't, audience. But I loved his answer on Chase Young not really hitting his ceiling, and I think having Cam there by his side, that veteran
Mm-hmm.
presence can really go a long way.
Yeah, I think they're all going to push each other. It's a very easy cliche thing to say, but the vibes are good. And I think they're going to continue to ride them. Cam Jordan was apparently calling people nonstop, trying to stay in the loop. He said that Tyler Shough was calling him. Shough said that Cam was really bugging him about all sorts of things, just sending him pictures from the Derby, like whatever it was, just trying to stay connected to the guys. So I think that he is extremely happy to be back. When he called Mickey Loomis, he said, "I'm all in. Let's do this." So I think there's going to be nothing but good that comes from this on and off the field for the team.
Cam Jordan back in New Orleans, 1-year contract worth $7.5 million. Could get that up to $11 million if he hits his
Mm-hmm.
incentives. Let's see what happens with Cam in his 16th season here in 2026. And with some further conversation on the current New Orleans Saints, Erin, they wrapped up their summer practices pretty much, finished up mandatory minicamp this past week. And I know you have some observations, a few quick thoughts that I have coming out of these practices. I thought it was interesting. And again, they're on air here. There's not too much that we can learn,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly. But I think we learned that the Saints really want to use Barion Brown on offense this
Yeah.
year. You saw a lot of unique looks with him lining up in the backfield, some jet sweeps. And the easy way to say it, I think, would be that they want to make him the Rashid Shaheed replacement. And we know what he can do on special teams, but offensively, the Saints seem to think that he could be a much more effective offensive player in the NFL than he was in college with Kentucky and with LSU.
I think he's going to get opportunity. And the fact that through the offseason so far, Chris Olave and Jordyn Tyson have been limited as they're still rehabbing back, being monitored because of previous injuries. You're starting to see some of those other receivers stand out and take advantage of more reps. And I think that Barion Brown is one of them. Yes, he is in there as a receiver on special teams, and I think he'll be a returner, and I think we'll see him in that role often. He's fast, and I think he likes that. He's not afraid to hit people. But he definitely stood out in the amount of reps and the impact he was having on the offensive side. And I want to give a shout out to Oscar Delp as well. He had a touchdown yesterday. He was back on the field after injury and really stood out these 2 days in minicamp. And then Bryce Lance as well. I know he's somebody that you're high on. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday. So he also is starting to shine a little bit, taking advantage of some more of those reps. So I don't know how many wide receivers, I mean, easily can have 6 on the roster when it's all said and done. It's going to be tough to narrow this down.
And that's exciting, I think, because they're all young and you don't have much money committed to any of them. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously the price tag eventually is going to drop on Chris Olave, and that's going to cost you a lot of money. But they can really kind of take their time and evaluate these guys and see where and
Yeah.
how they're going to want to use them. You mentioned Bryce Lance, but also Trey Palmer, I think a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago, had a really good practice. It's just a lot of young guys that could do a lot of different things. And again, you're not committing a lot of money to like a Valdez Scantling if they re-signed him or something like that. So it's a little bit scary because you don't know who it's going to be because there's just so many guys in that wide receiver room. But I
Mhm.
think the fact that there's a lot of youth and there's not a lot of money tied up and you can kind of take your time and make the best decision, that's an exciting prospect for Saints fans.
Yeah, I think that you have not only your receivers, but your tight ends are going to be utilized a lot in the receiving game. And then even when you go to the backs in Alvin Kamara, we know what he can do there. And Travis Achan was getting involved in the passing game as well. Uh, I mean, that kind of like leads me into another whole topic if you want to get in there.
Yeah,
Alvin Kamara taking second team reps.
it's weird.
We've never seen that before, right?
Yes, that was a weird sight, man. I'm not gonna lie. I said that immediately to a couple of media members next to me, but he seemed to have a good attitude about it.
Mhm.
Still a little bit of pep in his step, but yeah, that was really strange watching Alvin with the twos.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because he hasn't been here the whole offseason or that is gonna be his role, and I kinda
Yep,
lean towards the latter.
I
I
think that's what
think
it
that
is.
they really are gonna let Travis Achan anchor this running game, and then Alvin Kamara, Devin Neal, Kendre Miller, other guys are gonna come in rotation alongside but behind him.
That seems to be the plan, and I agree with you. I think it's just a case where he's the starter, I'm the two. That's what the team is
Yeah.
determined, and I'm okay with it. And I know we've had this conversation a lot, but clearly the team wasn't pleased with Alvin Kamara's performance last year, not just his stats, but getting worse in blitz pickup and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But I don't think last year was a representation of just how good of a player he is. And I think now the
Right.
Saints with more continuity, and he talked about it. These are
Mhm.
Alvin Kamara's words, not mine. It's good for him to have a guy like Travis Achan sharing the backfield with him. He did it before with Mark Ingram, right?
Mhm.
And maybe it'll be a case where Travis is still the guy. He gets more of the carries, but Alvin can still be really efficient. And I think honestly, he could surpass his 400 plus yards of rushing from last year. I think he can have like a 500-yard season with less carries, and we're not even getting into his receiving skills. So I think that it shows professionalism for him to do that and still have a
Yeah.
pep in his step. And ultimately, it could be the best thing for the Saints offense.
I think especially when you remove Taysom Hill from the situation, head coach Kellen Moore was asked about Taysom Hill and where things stand with him, and he didn't really say anything either way. It doesn't seem like Hill is going to be a part of this team this season. But when you take away somebody who's such a dual threat weapon like Hill, and you add in somebody like AK every once in a while to be more of that downhill, the north south, like or shifty, like running back that is going to throw something different at you. I think that it only helps to have versatility and different looks going up against the defense.
Yeah, it's good to be multiple. And like I said with Steve, it just seems like the Saints are a lot more modern with their offense and with their defense. So I think that's
Mhm.
good. Did any other individual players stand out to you at practice this week? Again, I know that they're in not all the way in pads, but I
Mhm.
think that Audric Estimé looks pretty good. We've talked a lot about the running backs, and he really came on towards the end of last year. Just a physical runner, kind of short and
Mhm.
stocky, low to the ground, which I think helps him. And I think he's definitely going to play a role this year, Aaron. I don't know if it's going to be like a short distance back where the Saints really struggled last year. I don't know if
Mhm.
he's going to have games where he can get hot like he did a couple of games towards the end of last year. But even in pads, he just looks really imposing out there. Had a couple of plays where, and they're not going full contact, but he still like pushed a couple of guys back, like trucked them in that setting. So that's a guy that stood out to me. Has anybody stood out to you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point because Devin Neal is dealing with an injury. And when you look at that running back room, unfortunately, that has been the name of the game for them is injuries. Alvin missed the last 6 games of the season last year. Devin Neal had an injury to start the season. Kendre Miller was out majority of the year. So you're going to need some other guys that you can rely on. And I think Estime has shown that he can be that and not even just somebody who's good on the ground, but as that blocking back as well, which is going to be really important for them to establish a really good run game, which has been a big emphasis for the team.
And I like the point you made about Taysom Hill because last year it seemed like that's what they really wanted his role to be. Like short
Mhm.
distance, 3rd and 1, wildcat quarterback, if you want to call it that. And it just didn't go very well. I think you could tell that unfortunately he lost a little bit of his explosiveness. And like Kellen Moore talked about in the press conference, that's going to be hard to replace. But again, there's a lot of kind of variety. There's a lot of different
Yeah.
kind of skill sets that you have in the backfield there. And hopefully Devin Neal can get right. I think the
Mhm.
injury to him is unfortunate because he was playing really well before he went down
Yeah.
last year. And there seemed to really be a role for him coming into this season. So hopefully he can get right as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to note that there was 100% attendance. That's always great when you have mandatory minicamp. Sometimes there are the approved absences, but no, everybody was there. So we saw players like Nathan Shepard, who hadn't been in attendance for any of the OTAs, was there. So it's good to see that everybody was in the building for these past 2 days. Not everybody was able to participate, but as I mentioned, we saw Christian Miller get on the field for the first time and take reps. So especially as a rookie, it's good for him to at least go through the motions, even though, again, no pads are on and there's no real hitting, blocking happening there in the line. But the other thing that I noticed was they did 11 and 11 work and 7-on-7 work. We didn't see them do 11 on 11 work until training camp last year. So it seems like the team is further ahead, and which makes sense because it's a second year under head coach Kellen Moore and his staff, but they're further ahead in the install. They did situational work, red zone work yesterday, and I think that that's going to really help where they're at come the start of the year when you have some tough opponents to start the season.
That is a great point. I didn't even consider that they didn't even do that till training camp last year, but it makes sense because they finally have continuity, Aaron. I mean,
Mhm.
think back just in my head since 2022. That year you had a new starting quarterback with Jameis Winston. Didn't work out. 2023, you have a new starting quarterback with Derek Carr. You keep him coming into the next season, but you bring in a new offensive coordinator in Clint
Mhm.
Kubiak. And then last year, you finally have Kellen Moore and Tyler Shough come in. And this year, they're
But you
both
didn't even
back.
start with Tyler Shough to start the
Exactly.
season. So,
Exactly. That's a
yeah,
good point. Didn't even play a full NFL season. So just that continuity is a good thing in theory. And now you
yeah,
see it being applied that they're literally
mhm,
further ahead in the offseason.
yeah. I think that's gonna be huge for everybody, and, Tyler Shough has taken it upon himself to be here every single day. He said he has not left New Orleans since the season ended, and I think you gotta give him props because he's been taking extra time with the players to not only get reps in at the facility, but outside at Tulane, other fields, whenever it works out for some of the receivers, tight ends. But then also the team bonding that we're seeing from him, the dinners that they're going to. He said they spent time watching the NBA finals together. I think those moments are huge in bringing the team together, getting everybody on the same page. So all of the little things are going to add up to this team being in a better position than they were when we saw them take the field in training camp last year.
And fans love to see that from their quarterback. I see a lot of fans on Twitter saying they did not
Mhm.
see that from their last starting quarterback here in New Orleans.
Hmm.
So good work for Tyler Shough. That's some good PR work, and this will make the fans even happier. Aaron, our friend Mike Triplett over at New Orleans Football reports that Tyler Shough told him that he's drawing up a plan with Drew Brees to go over there, start a
Mhm.
workout with some of his teammates, specifically some of the tight ends and some of the wide receivers. Go check out that write up by Mike. Really good details in there. But
Mhm.
he apparently has had some kind of relationship with Drew Brees since he was drafted. It's kind of intensified since last football season. And now he's going to actually fly out there with some Saints teammates and have a workout at Drew Brees' training facility. And I wanted to ask you, because you would know this better than me, being around the team and working for them and whatnot. This is the first time Drew's done anything like this with a Saints quarterback, right? I know he taught some with Jameis and with Derek Carr, but I don't remember him actually working out with one of his successors.
Drew Brees is very willing to share advice, get out there on the field with somebody, but he's not going to offer it or tell you to do it. I think Tyler Shough has taken it upon himself to utilize Drew Brees, and why would you not? Shough has come in here and shown that he is not only a smart football player, but he is smart off the field in the way that he's dove into the community here, the culture, staying in town, taking it all in, experiencing what New Orleans is, and developing those relationships with not only his teammates, but the fan base. And now, I mean, Drew Brees, first ballot Hall of Famer. You can call him up and ask him questions. Why would you not? And then go to San Diego, get out of the heat in New Orleans, take your your friends, your teammates to the beach. I mean, that's what Tyler was talking about yesterday. He said it is going to be so fun to get out there. They're going to go to the beach. They're going to have some of that bonding time there as well. And then also utilize Brees and his knowledge and work on some different things. And I think it speaks volumes to who Tyler Shough is, his preparation, and how much he truly gets it and cares about being the franchise quarterback here.
Yeah, it's cool. And Drew Brees can give him really specific advice, not just on how to be a great quarterback, but how to be a great quarterback in New Orleans
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and handling success. Because quite frankly, everybody's happy with Tyler Shough now based on his performance.
Mm-hmm.
And like we're talking about, he deserves a lot of credit for his effort with the media, with some of the stuff he does with his teammates off the field. But this is a big, big season for him. Obviously, there's so many quarterbacks that perform so well as a rookie, but then once the book is out, maybe they have a coach fired. Again, the continuity is definitely an advantage for him. But he definitely has to come out and apply all this from the start of the season. If not, all these fuzzy feelings and good vibes are going to sour really quick. And you know that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to perform when it's all said and done, right? And it's about wins and losses. And Tyler Shough knows that. He's mentioned it several times, the sense of urgency that he has, because he wants everything to be ready to go and right, everyone on the same page so they can have success as soon as possible and not have to wait and try to figure it out as the season goes, like they kind of did last year because he got thrown in halfway through the season.
Exactly. And we talked when breaking down Tyler Shough, we both said we want to see him do a little bit better with the pre-snap stuff, right? Like a lot of the good plays that he had last year were improvisation, but we
Mhm.
we want to see some of the stuff that Edwards talked about this week actually on the field. They were
Mhm.
having a walkthrough session, and basically Tyler Shough didn't like the look that the defense gave, so he checked into another play. And it was really cool to see David Edwards, somebody who's played so long and has played with so many different good quarterbacks. I'll give him that praise. So if he applies stuff
Mhm.
like that in his second season, then the Saints and he are in really good shape.
Yeah. It's all going to be another step in his learning process as a pro quarterback and identifying the defense and being able to make those decisions quickly. Even right now, they're not going full speed. And I think that's what's going to make those joint practices that they're going to have with against three different teams, so three different defenses, so important when we get to training camp.
Yeah, those joint practices, I think, going to be really beneficial. That was something that's been reported a lot on this offseason, and I'm glad that the Saints are going to be able to apply it. And it's exciting, man. We're done with OTAs. We're done with mandatory minicamp. We're finally starting to get closer to the real thing. And we're starting to get close to the end of today's show as well
Mhm.
here on Bleav in Saints. But before we wrap up, I do want to give a shout out to both Terron, Armstead, and Mark Ingram. They are officially first ballot Saints Hall of Famers, Erin. I say it at the beginning of the show, every episode, I'm a part of the media selection committee that votes on these guys and elects them. This was both of their first years eligible. And no disrespect to any of the other Saints greats that were up for this, but the longevity of both of these guys, the consistency of both of them, talking about the Saints' all-time leading rusher in Mark Ingram and a stalwart on the offensive line in Terron Armstead, part of some really, really good Saints teams towards the end of the Drew Brees era.
Mhm.
And a lot of these guys are kind of before my time, right? Like I got to do a lot of history. I got to do a lot of research, and I take pride in my Saints history. But these are two guys that I saw up close, Erin, and they're definitely very well deserving of this.
I love both of these guys as players and as humans. They are always so accommodating, kind, easy to talk to. They still follow the Saints. They still love the city of New Orleans. They still give a lot back. So I think that it was an absolute no brainer. So good job, Mario, and the committee for, you know, giving them that nod, first ballot, and it's going to be a really fun moment to see both of them back here for that later this year.
Yes, ma'am. It will be. I really enjoyed the conversation with Steve Weish earlier this week. Please check that out if you haven't. Before we wrap up, Erin, we talked Cam Jordan. We gave our observations on minicamp. We talked about Tyler Shough and Drew Brees linking up. Any final thoughts as we go into the weekend here?
Hey, we're still going to be here. Just because there are no practices and the committee camp is over, Mario and I will still be here weekly, twice a week at least, breaking everything down, bringing more guests in. So don't go anywhere. Make sure you do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well said. Really enjoying doing the show with Erin. She is doing a great job. Shout out to all of you for listening and watching. And also shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. Again, great time of year to take advantage of all the boosts and bonuses, especially if you're a new customer, and lots of action to get on. NFL futures, baseball season, the World Cup is often popping. France is the betting favorite as we speak at plus 420 odds. I really like the USA to reach the semifinal at plus 600, 6-1. Might put a little bit of sprinkle on that. So shout out to our friends at FanDuel for sponsoring Bleav in Saints. For Erin Summers, I am Mario Jerez saying thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. For Erin, I'm Mario saying thanks again. Who dat? Talk to y'all soon.